Another week is upon us, and that means we have some more fantasy football frauds popping up all over your rosters that need to be traded prior to this week's games. These are players that I'm not confident or bullish on over the course of the entirety of the 2022 NFL season, but they may have produced well for your teams here as it related to this past week's action. So let's take those positive performances, let's turn them into some big gains for the roster here, and talk 5 must-sell running backs for Week 4 fantasy football here in 2022. If you're new around here, drop down, smash that like button, subscribe if you haven't done so already, and turn the bell on so you're never late for a new piece of content. We're posting multiple videos every single day of the week here on YouTube, and my name is Gavin. I'm here to help you guys crush your fantasy leagues this year, and I always welcome your questions down in the comment section below. So let me know your trade scenarios here for Week 4 fantasy football, and let's dive into the video. All right, our first fantasy fraud here for Week 3 is Devin Singletary, the running back for the Buffalo Bills, coming off a big, juicy 18.5 point scoring outing against the Miami Dolphins. What the box score doesn't display here is, of course, the dependency that Singletary had on the receiving game. He did some very nice things there, but man, was his rushing attack just putrid for this week. 9 carries for 13 yards. Very inefficient, barely over a yard per carry, and not something that's obviously very encouraging going forward. Now, Singletary, along with Clyde Edwards-Helaire, are 2 backs that actually, Clyde had 0 rushing yards this week. Both put up solid performances overall for your fantasy box score, but I don't like this in terms of long-term sustainability. If you're going to tell me that Devin Singletary needs to get 11 targets out of the backfield every week to be a viable lineup play, you're crazy. I'm not depending or counting on that on a weekly basis. This Bills offense had a weird dynamic. They dominated time of possession. They held the football so long, but their offense felt like it never really got started. So this is a weird week for me. I think this is an anomaly performance. Again, he did have 9 receptions this week, but he averaged just 2.5 targets per week in the first 2 games of the year. So he had a 2-yard touchdown reception. As much as I want to bash on Devin Singletary for his lack of goal line use, he was in the package for that play. But personally, long term, I don't think you can depend on that level of opportunity here. I think he's better off scoring a touchdown on a 37-yard scamper where he just breaks a tackle and gets out in space, which he's looked good when they give him rushing attempts so far this year. It's just the key factor is unpredictable usage. We don't know how they're going to deploy him each week and what that's going to look like for your fantasy team. So, again, yes, I am conceding he was in the package for the goal line, but I'm going to say this as well. I bet you there's a better chance, let's go 65-35, Josh Allen, if they were actually intending to run the football, they would just use him as a battering ram instead of turning around and handing it off to their 5'7" running back, who they haven't really shown an urgency to get him the football in that area of the field, and I can't imagine why. So, Devin Singletary, the first fantasy fraud here, if you will, for Week 4. Jeff Wilson Jr., another player, didn't have the nastiest fantasy scoring game of the week per se, in terms of that being a good thing, him actually going out there and dominating your lineups, but he did have over 100 yards from scrimmage, 106 yards total on 15 touches. He looked good when he touched the rock. He was efficient out there. Every time I looked up, I felt like Jeff Wilson was breaking a tackle, making somebody miss, and getting to the second level of the defense. But I talked about this last week. There is an expiring date on an expiration date, if you will, on Jeff Wilson's fantasy viability for starting lineups. That date is coming in about 6 weeks here when Elijah Mitchell returns. And I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but the longer you wait, the less trade stock he has and the less value he has in the open market for you to actually get reputable assets. So there's always the risk, of course, that Shanahan runs him into the ground between now and then you're really screwed. Without trade value, without having that lineup piece, go find something more long-term. He did fumble the game away. That was unfortunate. He caught like a Jimmy G scrambling pass where, Jimmy was under pressure. He's under duress. He dumps it down to the running back. Jeff Wilson takes off and starts running and then gets peanut punched and the game is over. So unfortunate ending to the situation for Jeff Wilson this past week, but again, still looking to sell him despite the 100-yard scrimmage performance, despite looking good and actually impressing me based off of what he put on tape. The fantasy viability, though, is something that, again, There is an expiration date here, people. Let's not forget that that is the case. Jamaal Williams, I think this one might be a little bit polarizing. I think we're going to have some conflicting opinions in the comment section below. Of course, I welcome that. And if you guys have a differing stance on this than I do, let me know. I'd love to hear it. But my stance on Jamaal Williams is as such. We got some more news on DeAndre Swift. He had a shoulder sprain suffered and sustained on Sunday against the Vikings, and that is the explanation for why, in addition to his ankle injury that was already pre-existing, that DeAndre Swift was basically minimized to being the backup running back, if you will. Jamaal was used as the workhorse for this team. 22 total touches, 20 of them came on the ground, 107 yards from scrimmage, 87 yards rushing on the ground. He looked great. He was very physical. He was very involved. Of course, he had the numerous hip thrusts that got him an unsportsmanlike conduct penalty after scoring a touchdown, one of the two he scored on the day. But also, rest in peace, Lions fans. I feel very bad for you guys choking that game away. I'm a Packer fan. I don't mean that as like a subtle diss. Like, I actually was cheering for the Lions because I hate the Vikings. But besides the point here, Jamaal Williams looked good in this matchup. He was used dynamically, didn't have super large receiving involvement, but was productive, over 10 yards per catch in that phase of things. So Jamaal, for me, is definitely someone with lineup startability. If DeAndre Swift misses time, it sounds like that shoulder sprain is going to have him shut down for the next couple of weeks here. And Dan Campbell came out and said, hey, it might be a positive to have Swift out for the next couple of games. We need him to get right. We need him to be healthy. So you've got a similar situation here to Jeff Wilson Jr., but, this is a big but, put asterisks around this here, more urgency. You've only got 2 weeks now. Make this move. Find the Dalvin Cook owner who might be scared that he's going to miss time. I hear he's day-to-day with his shoulder injury. Find somebody else that lost their team's starting running back from this past week's action. Maybe it's a panicking owner, someone who owns James Conner. He's been letting them down recently. Whatever the case might be. Maybe it's the David Montgomery owner. They need Khalil Herbert. They don't have him. Jamaal Williams, here you go. So unless you are super dependent on Jamaal's production for your lineup, or are the incumbent DeAndre Swift owner, meaning you have both of them handcuffed on your team, I'm selling him. Take advantage of this quick turnaround here. Sell Jamaal while he has value on the trade market. He had value after week 1, scoring a couple touchdowns in that game and finding the end zone there. Now again here after week 3, I think he's got the opportunity to be a trade piece. Maybe he's a toss-in. Maybe you're making a bigger, more aggressive move, but nonetheless, I'm looking to move Jamaal here. Damien Harris, another name. I know there's a large camp of folks that are big Damien Harris believers. I unfortunately am not one of them. Damien Harris for me is somebody that I have significant concerns about, stemming from the fact that in the first 3 weeks of this season, he has not played more than 40% of the Patriots' offensive snaps once. 40%, that's been the ceiling so far. Not cutting it for me. The last 2 weeks, Ramondre Stevenson, 62% of the snap share in back-to-back games. So for me, after seeing Stevenson be the more efficient player multiple times here, especially this week, and score a rushing touchdown, that spells bad news here for Damien Harris. That makes me, as a guy who was already skeptical on Damien Harris because of his lack of pass game involvement, I know that, some of you guys just, you don't care, but for me, efficiency in the passing game is a big deal, especially in PPR. If you're playing standard, then I guess who cares, even though receptions are more valuable in terms of their efficiency per opportunity in that phase of the game. Besides the point, a conversation for another time. I'm sure I'll bring it up plenty when talking about Nick Chubb this year. But Damien Harris, for me, after seeing him get out snapped in back-to-back games, post Ty Montgomery landing on IR in week 1 by Ramondre Stevenson, and then seeing Stevenson being the more productive and impactful player in those 2 weeks in terms of, Harris has found the end zone in multiple games in a row now. But if that isn't the case, when that doesn't happen, I'm going to be a bit worried. I think that's when you start getting those bust performances, when his value starts to drop here. And I think that could be the case as early as week 4, taking on the Green Bay Packers. You might get a bad game script. You might be walking out with your pants down. No Mac Jones. We don't know about that yet when I'm recording this episode. If he's in there, he's going to be banged up, immobile in the pocket. Bad news. Green Bay's got a good front 7. You know what that means? You're going to be getting sacked. You're going to have your third down package in the offense. And that's Ramondre Stevenson. So If Harris isn't out there, now Harris did have 3 targets this week, but Ramondre Stevenson had more. Stevenson had 16 touches this week to Harris's 13. So it's not like he's totally getting wiped off the face of the earth and being this irrelevant fantasy running back. but touchdown dependency is becoming a very, very more so, it's growing its prominence in terms of what I expect for his weekly outlook to be here. If the Pats get down on the inside the 3-yard line, chances are Damien Harris is going to get the rock at least one time between first and third down. But Stevenson is a big, bullish running back as well, does similar things in addition to being a better pass catcher, and especially if you have no Mac Jones, if you're having a backup quarterback in here, I believe it's still Brian Hoyer. If he's checking down that football, throwing it in the passing game to a Ramondre Stevenson, who's getting more snaps, more opportunities in this offense, that's bad news for Damien Harris owners, and I'd look to move off of him. And then Cam Akers here, LA Rams running back. Offload him, the message here, offload Cam Akers while the arrow is still pointed upwards. You've got 2 weeks now, back-to-back situations where Cam Akers had more touches than Darrell Henderson in this Rams offense. It looks like that is going to be the trend here going forward. However, when looking forward on the schedule, I noticed a big, glaring red flag. That red flag being, of course, the team that wears red, the San Francisco 49ers. I think as soon as next week, Cam Akers could be stuffed right back down to the bottom of the pile, have a bust week here, be a very lackluster start, and those of you that start him, I think, might regret it next week. We can talk about that in lineup advice here later on in week 4 fantasy talk here, but with that matchup on the schedule coming here this coming week, I'm looking to move Cam Akers again in back-to-back games, having more touches than Darrell Henderson. He played the best football I've seen him play in a long time this past week against the Arizona Cardinals. He averaged over 5 yards per carry. Looked, obviously from an efficiency standpoint, that was, his best outing in a long time here. And he just looked a little bit more explosive, but he still did have some blunders, fumbled a ball on the goal line, did score a touchdown, did find the end zone. He looked good, like I said, as compared to the rest of the body of work we've seen from him lately as a Los Angeles Ram. But I think that with his stock, you're going to see a lot of extremes. And after seeing how far it plummeted after week 1 to how it came back up in week 2, how it rose gradually even more in week 3 after that production kind of joined alongside the opportunity share for this offense, that could come crashing down, and you could be looking at yourself with the regret in week 5 if you don't go ahead and make this move here right now in week 4. So those are 5 of our fantasy frauds here, our must-sell running backs. I just kind of made that up on the fly here. Hopefully no one else has a segment called that or something. If they do, let me know, and I'll stop saying it in the comment section below. But thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you guys in a future episode. Again, let me know your trade situations down in the comments, and check out some of the other links in the description of today's episode. I'll see you later. Peace out.